the meeting that was held on the 19th of June 2023. Is that carried? Carried. Thank you. Our first order of business, and I note that the clerk has said we don't have any delegations, but the first order of business is the O-Train Stage 2 Light Rail Transit Project Quarterly Report. Before we get into the presentation, I will just say, this is our continued effort to put the high beams on this project to see how things are progressing and give councillors the opportunity to ask questions on the construction project. We have, of course, over the course of the last few months, done a number of things. We have come up with an action plan to respond to the commission of an inquiry that was undertaken, and we'll be getting an update in terms of how those recommendations are continuing to be responded to in the early part of the fall. We have done a peer review on the O-Train line deep dive to give us some third-party advice to make sure that things are moving in the right direction. And then at our last meeting, we had a rail operations readiness meeting, which didn't focus on the construction of the project, but rather all the myriad of tasks that are at play to make sure that once the system is up and running, so the Trillium line, that we are ready to take on passengers in a high quality and high service standard way. So we've done quite a bit of work, and today is again another chapter in that oversight of this very important project for the citizens of Ottawa. So with that, I'll turn it over to Madame Amika pour commencer.
Who will start her presentation. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm very, very pleased to be here with you after a very, very busy summer. After a couple of weeks off, I'm now ready to get back down to work together on this project.
Today, we will provide you with information on the status of the construction of all 3 O-Train extensions and provide you an update. Over the course of the next few meetings, we will provide you with more information on the progress of the O-Train expansion project, as well as plan for launching lines 2 and 4. Today, Michael Morgan, the director of our rail construction program, will provide a construction update on the Stage 2 LRT. Amazing progress is being made across the O-Train extension project. Through Ottawa, you can see the project taking shape with stations out of the ground, rail in place, and more. It's easy to see how this infrastructure will connect and move you through our city. As we get closer to opening, there will be many milestones to celebrate, and we look forward to sharing those with you. One of which is the opening of pedestrian bridges across the extension, enhancing connectivity and promoting active transportation within our communities. Earlier this month, we opened the Woodruff Pedestrians Bridge, connecting Woodruff High School to the west side of the Transitway, south of Carling Avenue. We are committed to delivering a safe, efficient, and reliable rail system that meets the needs of our city. I will now pass things over to Michael. Merci.
Thank you and good morning. Glad to be here and glad to give you an update on all the progress we've made on the construction over the past few months. It has been a very busy summer, and I think you'll see that in the photos and the update we provide today. So again, we just start with an overview of the map. In terms of the flow of the presentation, we're going to start with the south and just go from there. So when we talk about the extension to the south, there's basically 2 tracks. One track is the stations, and the second track is the train control and the train commissioning. So I'm going to start with the station track and just kind of give you a sense of where we are. So when I talk about Bayview Station, it's in very good shape. We don't have occupancy for this station or any of the stations, which is kind of one of the big things that's coming up. But if you're near that location, you see that they're basically focused on final communication systems, final cleanup of the stations, and they're onto the landscaping, which is a really good indication of where we are on the project. The same thing at Corso Italia, very good progress. We don't have occupancy at that station, but the communication systems are being installed. The station is just going through some final finishing works, and then they're starting to do the landscaping activity seriously now, just so that they can, there's a few different things that we need around that station for emergency access, so they're finishing that up now. We go to Dow's Lake Station. So very good progress here. So you see in the middle of the photo there, this is where we originally on the original O train line, we only had a single elevator. And so we've expanded that. So we have 2 elevators there. So some redundancy now in case one of them fails. This station is in good shape, save and except for the fact that we haven't been able to get permanent power to the station. So that's what's holding this up. So affected by the strike, there's about 4 days worth of work to get that station connected, and then we need to commission all the systems. So absent that connection, we're not able to finish this station. Going down the line to Carlton. So Carlton's looking very good. Again, we're into the landscaping at this location, and the comm systems and the majority systems are in place at that location. A little bit further down, Rideau River, I know there's a lot of excitement about this pedestrian bridge. We get a lot of questions, and so this photo gives you a pretty good sense of where we are. So on the south embankment, the multi-use pathway is basically in place. It needs to be paved. On the bridge itself, we need to do the deck pours, put in the hand railing, put in the electrical. And then on the north side, the approach ramp needs to be finished. And then you see on the left in the top corner, there's some supportive excavation. They're working on the drainage at that location. And so still a bit of work to do, but first deck pour this week, second deck pour next week, and then, some paving and additional work. So still a little bit of work to do before we can open that bridge. We go further down to Mooney's Bay. This station's been in very good shape the last little while. On this photo, you don't see it, but we have actually paved the multi-use pathway that gets to the station. So again, at this location, we're into cleanup mode. Walkley Station, one of the more advanced ones. On the left-hand side there, you see the new multi-use pathway that's going to connect into the neighborhood. And then you see on the right, they're starting to work on basically the fence line and the final landscaping that's essentially down below from that station. So that station's in very good shape. Fare gates installed, communication systems installed. So again, no occupancy. That's going to be one of the big things that we need to focus on in the coming weeks, and no final approvals on the elevators. MSF building. So we did a tour through there the other day. It's looking very good. The vehicles are inside. The front of the screen here, you see a wheel lathe, which is something we never had under the old system. We had to send the wheels out to get turned if they got wheel flats. So now we have that capability on site, which is very good, very exciting for the maintainer. Moving down to Greenboro Station. Again, Greenboro's been in great shape for a long time now. We used it for doors open. We had a train parked there. You see on the bottom of the picture, the fence lines going in. They're going to be doing some you see little kind of foundations, those are in place, and then you can kind of see that they come up to signage. So final signage, final landscaping at this location, it's in very good shape. A little bit further down at South Keys. So South Keys is coming along, but this is the second. So there's 2 stations that don't have permanent power, and South Keys is the second station that doesn't have it. So they're still finishing some of the composite panels on the exterior building. But really the holdup here is to get that permanent power so we can continue commissioning of the station. A little bit further down, I know this is one of the bridges that we talked about for a long time at this committee, and at FEDCO before that was finishing. This bridge really kind of opens up the network. And so you see there, this is a slightly older photo, but they are finishing the track across this bridge. We basically have access to the complete system now. They're going to have to do a little bit more surfacing. So they raise the track to the final elevation within a couple of centimeters. So still a little bit more work. And then the other kind of really, for the community in this area, the really interesting piece that's included with this bridge is on the left-hand side there, you see the concrete path, which is a new pedestrian connection across the road, and then it'll connect you to what was the old Osgood Trail. It gets you all the way down to Beausville on a multi-use pathway. So again, we haven't spoken a lot about this pedestrian connection, but this is again another one that's going to be very exciting for the community. Leitrim Station. So Leitrim Station's in good shape. The big focus at Leitrim is really the park and ride. So you see kind of down on the left-hand side, on the bottom, they're working on the sidewalk there. And then there's the corner of a bus operated building just poking out of the picture there, and where the white truck is, that's where the bus loop is going to be. So the focus now is really just finishing the park and ride, making it available for transit services. They want to do some bus loop testing, make sure the bus loop's working correctly, move into the bus operated building. So the focus here is really about the park and ride. So there's again, the bus operating building is in very good shape. We were there last week. They're doing a lot of work on the pavements and the curb lines there. So it's coming along, but we really need to get going with the paving and get that done shortly. A little bit further down, Beausville is kind of in the same situation where you look at the bus operator building in the middle of the page. It's in very good shape, very advanced. The station itself is in good shape. We're on to, again, the final commissioning, the final communication systems and other equipment installation. But the focus is really to get that park and ride to a usable state. There's a nearby intersection, Beausville and Earl Armstrong. We need to get that to a usable state. And so that's kind of the two big activities that are going to happen at this location over the coming month. And then a little bit further down, just at Limebank Station, Limebank itself is in good shape. We've had trains down there, no issues there. Again, there's a couple of things going on here that are our focus. One is the bus loop. And then there's actually also, so the bus loop, it has a signalized intersection connecting to Limebank. And then there's also a secondary main street that connects to Earl Armstrong. And so, you know, we have committed to, or the contractors committed to providing at the very least a pedestrian connection from Earl Armstrong, but we're working with them to find out the timing to ensure if that full main street is available for use when the system opens. We go over to the Ernst & Young Center. So this is actually, you can't really tell on the photo, but this is a 40-meter platform, not an 80-meter platform. So this one's a little bit farther behind. You see they're still finishing up the composite panel work. But otherwise, you know, that's pretty simple work to do. One of the things that when you go through the stations today, what you do see is that there's a lot of glass in these stations, and the glass is coming from overseas. And there's a number of locations where they've had to put in kind of a finished plywood as a placeholder because, you know, they may receive the glass, it's broken. They put in a plywood placeholder just on a temporary basis. The idea is to get obviously all the glass in place, but there may be some scenarios where instead of a glass panel, we'll on a temporary basis, we might just use a plywood panel. And then the airport station, which is in very good shape. It's been in very decent shape for a long time now. And just another look at the platform there. The signage is all in place, doing very well. I mean, there's not a lot going on there. We've got trains to go there. We're very close to occupancy there. The last thing that we need to do to get occupancy is to get the fire alarm system connected from here back to our control center. Getting that fire alarm system is really kind of the last thing we need to do to get occupancy at a number of stations. And then just in terms of some of the mobility impacts, I think most people, these have been fairly static, I would say, over the last couple of years, just the multi-use pathway along the Trillium line being impacted. And then obviously with the intersection, if you're down near Beausville, Limebank, you know, there's a lot of, you're driving through a construction zone right now. You know, there's a lot of traffic cones, construction activity in that area. If we talk about just some of the upcoming activities, obviously finishing testing commissioning. So we're out just about every night right now with the Stadlers and verifying the operation of the Stadlers on the line, but also the operation of the signal system. We need to get occupancy for the stations. And then once we have those two things done, then we can kind of look at timing for trial running and then start into some of those operational readiness and dress rehearsal activities that we spoke about last time. The other thing that we did want, you know, just because this is a carryover slide from a few months ago when we provided a deep dive on some of the project risks, we just wanted to highlight a couple of things that are still going on. Obviously, the safety management during construction, we still to this day cannot afford to have a safety incident because that will absolutely push out the schedule if we have any kind of safety incident during construction. Now is the difficult time during construction because we're testing trains, we're trying to finish construction, they're putting fencing up along the guideway. Now is the time where we need to make sure we're doing everything safely so we don't have any issues. In terms of remaining works, you know, Transport Canada approvals, the TSSA approvals for the elevators, building code occupancy, those are kind of the big things driving the stations. And then, you know, once we do that, then it's just about time for testing, time for training. You know, we really need to take the time now to invest in that activity to make sure that we're ready to go going forward. Just in terms of, you know, the look ahead on the overall schedule and where it sits, you know, this hasn't changed too much. Obviously, we're, you know, taking in mind and taking into consideration the things that came up during the public inquiry in terms of safety management from the start, systems integration from the start, having third-party oversight for the trial running program, which we've now put in place, making sure that we're essentially just patient and we, to borrow a term from another big project, we enter service cautiously. So we take our time, we do it correctly. So that's the Trillium line. So now I'm going to go quickly through the east. So Montreal Station in the east. So you see, a lot of activity going on here. You see the platform there. You see the glass coverage kind of going up in the middle. One of the last things that will be done at this station is there's actually noise barriers that get installed between the highway and the station platform to give protection to users who are going to be on the platform from spray and noise. And then once that's done, then there's going to be another shift of traffic. And you see there's kind of a lane and a half there that we can give back to the highway. So we're going to do that next year. A little bit further down at Jeanne d'Arc, coming along, this station's in very good condition. It's actually about 90% complete. So we're quite happy with the progress here. One of the things that we'll talk about a little bit later is we've committed to making big changes to this location in terms of the road configuration. If you look at the road configuration now, 4 lanes of traffic with a center median. It's a dangerous place to walk as a pedestrian. It's even more dangerous if you're on a bike. And so we have a plan in place to rebuild this entire road, but that's going to require a lot of work and there are going to be impacts. We're working through with the contractor what those impacts are going to be, but in order to rebuild the road, give back space for pedestrians and cyclists, we need to strip the surface down. We need to put new bridge bearings in. There's a whole bunch of work here. The outcome will be fantastic, but there will be some impacts in the short term. And this is just another look from a different angle. Next station down, Convent Glen, looks very similar. Not quite as much progress. And then just in terms of the track, so if you think end to end, plus there's a pocket track, there's roughly 25 kilometers of track that needs to be laid in that location, and we've installed 23.5 kilometers to date. So 90% of the track is installed on the east segment to date. So very good progress there. And then in terms of the catenary poles, about 50% of the catenary poles along the length of the alignment are in place. A couple of photos of Place d'Orléans. So here you see the platform. Where you see the yellow is they're getting ready for the final platform pour. So they bring the track through. And once the track's set, then they will pour the platform to make sure the platform height is at the right elevation. Once that's done, they'll be in a very good shape. The other thing, again, this will be similar to Montreal Road. There's a noise wall that will be sitting between the highway and the guideway to protect users on the platform from any impacts. This area you see here, we've closed the high-speed lane. We are working with the contractor to reopen that lane for the fall, and so we're watching that very closely now. Down further at Trim Station, so you see the tracks actually go quite far left out of the screen, but the station's coming along nicely. Next shot of the bus loop, or the bus station. So this is the transfer station. Again, this will be configured like other locations where if you're coming on the bus, you'll be able to just walk straight through. You won't have to swipe. It'll get into a fare paid zone. And juste pour regarder dans le futur un peu.
Now, if we look into the future, progress in the 5 stations were between 50 to 90% complete in terms of station progress. We want to start tests with trains this fall. This is the next thing we want to do so that we continue testing throughout next year so that we can open the system in 2025. So in the first few winter months of 2025, that's when we'll start trial running. So there's a lot of work that still needs to be done, but with the percentage of track that's already been laid, we're very, very satisfied. We think we'll be able to start testing on time so that we can test the control system. And next year, you'll see a lot of trains on the eastern segment. This will really show communities that we're really progressing with the project.
Just talk a little bit about some of the road impacts. So that, because we're working in the middle of the highway, there have been ongoing and continuous road impacts in this area affecting, some pretty pretty big peaks of traffic impact. So I have to acknowledge that that's been happening in the east. We are looking to clean that up. We are getting to a point where we can reduce some of the impacts on the highway. There's still work to be done on Montreal Road. There's a water main on Montreal Road we need to change. I spoke about Jeanne d'Arc. There's some big work happening on Jeanne d'Arc to get that to a place where it's really safe for pedestrians and active transportations and the accessibility community to get to that station. So there's a lot of work coming. So I don't want to undersell that there aren't going to be more impacts, but we are trying to reduce the impacts on the highway this year. And then just in terms of the timing, that's just as I spoke about, looking to really test the system. You know, we've got the track installed. We've got, you know, 50% of the catenary poles installed. We really want to focus next year on testing the trains, running the trains through that network. We go to the west. So this is just off the end of Tunney's pasture. We put in a new goldenrod bridge. The old kind of road was on a embankment, so the embankment's gone, and so now you can kind of see straight through down this way. So that's kind of the start of where the extension is. We are looking to mobilize a track crew potentially later this year in this area to start the continuation and the extension of the track to the west, which will be very exciting. Westboro Station, so they haven't quite started on this station yet. They're still just working on the foundation and some of the drainage work in this area. Kitchissippi Station, here it's a very, very tight area. Obviously, you see the temporary Roosevelt Bridge in the background there. We've had to put up a fixed tower crane just to be able to move materials around this site because it is, you know, we're between a transitway and a residential community, so it's quite tight in there. Just another kind of bird's eye view of the location, so you get a sense of where the station's going to fit in there. Obviously, this time next year, you'll see more of a station structure. This is basically at 0% progress, I would say, on station construction. It hasn't been handed over to the station team just yet. A little bit further down, when we get to the new tunnel that we're building, the 3-kilometer tunnel, just here's the start. So just to give you a sense of where we are on the tunnel. So it's a 2.9 kilometer tunnel. 2.2 kilometer of the tunnel will be covered, and to date we've completed 1.3 kilometers of the roof of the tunnel. So over half of the roof of the tunnel is complete. So that's where we have the complete structure of the walls, the bottom, the top, and we're starting now to backfill in some areas. And so we're kind of reaching that point in the project. We're coming over the other side of the tunnel construction, which is going to be very good for some of the houses and homes that are right up against that tunnel. So here you see they've filled it in. They're starting to use it as a crossway, a roadway to get more parking and access in this area. This is kind of what it looks like with the waterproofing on the roof just before it's filled in. This is one of our kind of key pinch points, Cleary Avenue. This will be one of the last sections to get the tunnel. This is a 90-meter section, one of the last sections to actually get the tunnel built. This is over the West Nepean Collector. For you utility buffs. So we have to be very sensitive about what we do in this area so as to not affect that structure. And the community, they helped us implement a detour in this area to give us more room. They've been fantastic to work with. This is one of the first station structures that you'll see. So into Byron Linear Park, this is kind of what the station structure is going to look like. You see the beams across, but the station will go down below. Again, here's just another look. You see a bit of a drainage pit there, but you get a sense of the station there. One of the next stations, and then kind of the far end of the tunnel when it kind of comes to the end of Richmond Road. Again, we've been very fortunate to have good partners in the community who gave us early access to this area, and so we're trying to get in there and build that section of the tunnel as quickly as possible. This is a very tight pinch point at the other end of Richmond Road that we need to get across. You go to Lincoln Field Station. So this is probably one of the most advanced, if not the most advanced station in the West. It's about 80% complete. So it's very good shape there. Obviously, this is a new 3-platform station. And so this is where the transfer will be to go either to Algonquin or to Moody. A little bit further is the flyover structure that we've built. Here's the new Woodruff pedestrian bridge that we were able to open up earlier this year. So very happy to get that open, to get people off of Carling and onto this bridge. We have had some feedback about on the left-hand side, the circuitous nature of that ramp. And, one of the things that causes delay with this project is that there is, and you can't see it in the photo, obviously, but there's a major high voltage underground Hydro One transmission line that we had to avoid. And so that's really kind of part of the reason for the path. And it was part of the reason for the delays as well. A little bit further, Ira Station's doing very good. It's in great shape. This is from a little while ago. Algonquin Station, same thing, very good progress there. You see they're at the point now where they're getting ready to do some of the paving work. Just another look. So this is the second head house for Algonquin Station, Queensview Station. And so this is where we put in the pedestrian bridge over the 417. And so you see the structure there. It needs, you put in the skeleton of the structure. You need to do concrete deck pours. You need to put in glass panels. You need to put in lighting. You see on the one side, we need to put in the elevator bank, on the other side, the elevator bank as well. And so a lot of work, and you'll see a lot of traffic, single lane overnight closures to allow us to get the glass in, to get the pieces in there. Until it's all kind of closed in, we're going to have to do overnight closures to get in there to do that work. Pinecrest Station, just kind of on the other side of a little bit further down from Queensview, just beside Pinecrest Road there, coming along nicely. Bayshore Station, so this is one where we're integrating with the existing bus transitway. On the middle of the screen there, you see basically it's going to be an underground pedestrian tunnel for emergency egress. It's really just a fire safety route. That's all it's going to be, but it's a lot of work to create that second exit. So if there's a problem with the primary exit, there'll be a second exit for people to use in the unlikely event of a fire. And then Moody Station down at the end, it's coming together nicely. Again, this will be, there'll be a bus loop here. This is where the transfers will take place. And the setup right now is that you basically be able to get off the bus into a fare paid zone and walk directly to the train. You won't have to change levels. You won't have to go up and down. You can basically get off the bus and go directly during the time when that bus loop is open. So the setup, I think, at this location is going to be very interesting for people who have to make a transfer. And then just a little bit further down, the LMSF. So the LMSF, this is the maintenance facility. It has a car wash and a light maintenance bay. This is just for light servicing. We're starting to put the track in there. They're trying to complete that yard this year, including the catenary installation. And then because of delays in the tunnel, we're going to figure out a way, we haven't sorted all the details out yet, to truck one of the Alstom vehicles over to the yard so we can do early testing with the train control system. So as soon as we finish train control testing on the east, we'll truck a vehicle over to the west and we'll start testing the yard just to kind of maintain the momentum with the signal testing. Just another look at some of the track work that's going in. And then just, kind of a look ahead to where we're going. Focus right now is on finishing the tunnel, making sure that the tunnel is complete as quickly as possible, keeping in mind, construction safety and road impacts and all the other things. Once we have the tunnel done, that really opens up the opportunity to make the track connection all the way through, and that creates kind of a new world of possibilities in terms of testing and training and commissioning. So that's what we're looking forward to there. In terms of impacts to the road network, I think it's these are pretty well known at this point. There hasn't been too many changes to the actual detours. Transitway closures happened about a year or so ago. We're still working on the Pinecrest interchange to see when that can get opened up. There's some pressures there in terms of do we do a partial opening or a full opening, and then and then we have to consider also one more detour near Iris, but still in the mix. Other than that, you'll see the 417 closures from time to time just to do some work on the pedestrian bridge. And then in terms of the schedule, we're still into the fall of 2026 in terms of where we are in the schedule. Still looking for opportunities to recover some time, but obviously some of it's accumulated and we won't be able to recover. And then just kind of a recap summary of some of the information sessions that we've had over the past few months. Obviously, people I know are anxious to know about the schedule on the Trillium line. We are planning to come back in September to provide a bit of a deeper dive. I know we owe you some feedback on, for example, the trial run scorecard, to bring you the actual scorecard so you can have it. So some of those kind of finer details and the timing of what do we need to do trial running, all those things, I think will come to you in the next month or so. And this is how you can get a hold of us. If you have any questions or feedback, always happy to take comments. We do try to respond to every single email we get and every single resident inquiry. The team is quite active in terms of responding and providing detailed information. And so hopefully that you take advantage of that and you subscribe to the newsletter if you have questions about traffic or want the latest traffic updates. With that, I think we'll take questions.
Great. Madame, quelque chose à ajouter avant la question? Non?
Rien, merci.
No, I'll just say it's Chair.
Nothing to add.
Thank you for the update today. And just on that last slide, yeah, that email subscription, I encourage residents to sign up and find out how this project and all these projects are moving forward in terms, especially the traffic impacts that you talk about. So I'm glad you pointed that out. We'll start with committee members. If you could put your hand up, I will recognize you, Councillor Leeper, and then Councillor Kavanagh, then Gower.
Thanks. I don't have a lot this morning. I think the one concerning thing I heard was with respect to getting power to South Keys and Carling Station. How is that expected to be resolved in a way that keeps us on our timeline?
So the current plan for Dow's Lake Station is we're going to have to park a very large generator at that location during daytime hours to be able to test the electrical systems. Today, that's our mitigation.
Okay. Can folks come in and see me about that?
Sure.
Ariel and I.
Yeah.
And that was really the only major question I had. I am curious about testing of the vehicles on the O train, or sorry, the line east, where you'll finish the track up. What will passengers see trains coming in from the east to Blair platform and then going back, or how does that work with the system still working running west?
Mr. Chair, so initially we will take a train over to that area and it will stay in that area. So the train will basically we'll use it to test between Trim Station all the way through. There's a pocket track just to the east of Blair. And that's basically going to be the turnaround point. At some point later in the program, we'll have to take the train closer to Blair Station. And then near the end of the program, we'll have to, at night, test the boundary condition. So we'll have to go back and forth from Blair through, basically, we'll set up a bit of a back and forth between Blair and Montreal Road, go back and forth across the boundary to make that boundary condition work. And then in the final stages before we open for the public, we would be doing a ghost running service where the trains would be running through. So all the trains would arrive at Blair. We'd have customer service personnel there, basically asking all passengers to disembark, and then the train would continue on through to Trim. So basically a form of ghost running where the trains would be through running all the way to Trim and passengers would have to disembark at Blair.
Fascinating. Thank you very much. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Continuing with members, Councillor Kavanagh.
Thank you very much, Chair. And thank you for the presentation. I also want to give thanks to the Stage 2 team for all the work they do and keeping me informed, my office informed, and residents informed. And thank residents for their patience. It's been a long haul. I think everyone could see from the slides how close houses are to the work, as opposed to the East End and the South. So they're very highly impacted. And it's important to keep them informed on what's going on and what we can do to mitigate the effects of all this construction, because it's massive. And they get it's important, of course, but it's anything we can do to help. I appreciate the fact that we've got the pedestrian bridge open at Woodruff, and I hope to be discussing maybe a new name for it, because I think it's time for a new name for it. So we can talk about that later. The pedestrian bridge at Queensview, as you can see, is just getting started, and residents are very anxious to have access to that as well. It's a huge connector, especially for students from Woodruff who actually come from the south side of the Queensway to the school, and it would be a huge boon. And it may be a little long to wait for another 3 years. Is there any chance that it could be used before the train opens for service?
So right now, that pedestrian bridge on either end is connected, uses elevators, so redundant elevator banks at either end of that station. So we're a long way away from getting those elevator banks connected. They also need to have their TSSA approvals in place, which is tied to building occupancy. So there would need to be a scenario where we could carve out building occupancy and maintenance obligations and a few other things to enable that to open up early, but that would be near the very end. Like there could be a scenario where, if we're still testing trains and everything else was done, building occupancy, fire alarm systems, all those things, there could be a scenario, but that's something we need to revisit probably in 2 years.
Okay, thank you. What's not on the slide, but something that's related is we recently, the city purchased a house on Severn to create a cut through for the residents of Queensway Terrace North to get to Queensview Avenue and to the station, of course. It's a huge boon, and I thank the city for that. When can we see that being an actual route? Even obviously, people will use it for other reasons, and it's just great to have that connectivity to Queensview.
We're still going through the design for that location. So we've secured the real estate. The design, obviously, it abuts our transit facility at that location. And so there's some work to be done. We need to finish the design this year and then look at opportunities for construction next year. So, but I can get back to your office with a more detailed timeline on that once I can reconnect with the team and see where we are in terms of the construction timeline.
That's great. And we do hope to have a meeting perhaps in the late fall to get people up to date. This presentation is great. I want to give something for the residents for how it affects them in their area. The emphasis on connectivity is very important, and I really appreciate it. One thing I noticed when I went over the pedestrian bridge at the Woodruff Bridge, I went at night and I found it a little hard. There's no lighting. And I know that we've been back and forth on this, but just personally, I found that it would be nice to have some low lights just to mark the way. Not talking about highlights, but that would be very helpful as someone who uses this and who cycles in that area. So I just want to pass that on, that that would be helpful. I also appreciate the fact that the connectivity in terms of cycling and pedestrians and keeping them separate as much as possible. If we can continue to do that, but that's really important. Not just have multi-use paths, but to emphasize wherever possible to keep cycling and pedestrians separate. I'm seeing that everywhere. The growth in cycling and walking started during the pandemic, and we see that we don't want those conflicts. So just to make sure that that's emphasized. Am I still okay for time?
Getting tight, but
okay.
continue.
The Pinecrest ramp closure. The signage says fall 2023, and people are chomping at the bit, and I keep getting asked when fall 2023. We're almost there. Can you give me a more precise timeline?
Mr. Chair, that area has been affected by a number of the recent storms. We're trying to finish the final invert of the tunnel, the cut and cover section that goes through that area. We are behind a little bit by a few weeks, struggling to finish that little piece off. And then from there, it would only be a staged opening of that interchange. And we're just trying to make sure that the staged opening makes sense at this time. So there's a team looking at that every day to say, when in fall 2023, is it still possible in fall 2023? Because there's been some delays. And so we're doing that review now. There is a chance that we push to next year.
Ooh, okay. All right, because I know that's one of those things that just makes it a little easier on residents who live in the area. It's just one more thing. We've got so many detours, of course. Ambleside detour has been a big factor. It's made a big change for those people who live in the Ambleside buildings, for example. The crosswalk there, I'm hearing a lot of concern that it's not safe because the PXO, because it just has flashing amber lights, and people do not feel safe. The volume of traffic is very heavy since it's taking all traffic from Richmond. So I'd like that to be looked at again, please. Lots of concern there. The average person there are seniors, but there's also young families that live in that area. Can that be looked at again for safe crossing?
Just as an update on the Ambleside detour, we are looking at reverting back to the single way. They have been making good progress. So for a while it was single direction only. Then we went to both directions. We are looking at, in the coming weeks, reverting back to single direction to it'll reduce the traffic volumes on that side street. And we'll reconfigure the crossings at that time, but hopefully that should provide some relief.
Okay, that's great. What direction?
It's still westbound onto Ambleside.
Well, westbound, okay. No, thank you. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Continuing with committee members, Councillor Gower.
Thanks, Chair. Wanted to get a couple of definitions or clarity. When we get occupancy, does that mean the stations are ready to use, or is there additional work that OC needs to do once we get occupancy of those stations?
So OC Transpo is right now, they're moving in with their equipment. So they do have access. And so there are some transit kind of controlled signs that are going in place. We're putting in the signage. So we're able to get in today and install our equipment. Some of the locations, occupancy is probably more important in terms of transit in respect of the bus operator buildings as well as the maintenance facility, because then you can place people there. They can be based out of that location without having any concerns about occupancy. But as much as possible on the stations, we're moving in today and we're putting in the equipment that's being provided by transit.
And what does that occupancy milestone actually mean? Does that mean it's done, or is that for a public safety point of view?
It's from a public safety point of view that from a regulatory perspective, you are allowed to put the public in that space, and it is safe for the public to be in there. It doesn't mean that it's 100% finished. You can have a punch list of deficiencies. You can have, outstanding things, but all the basic safety functions like the fire alarm, like the elevators, like the emergency phones need to be functional. And it needs to be built to a standard. The stairs, railings, all the safety features need to be in place.
Okay. In the memo we had a couple of weeks ago, there was a mention, I think we've heard about a committee too, operational readiness activities. So after trial running, there are additional operational readiness activities. Can you remind me again what is involved, what kind of activities happen after trial running?
So one of the big ones we spoke about is having a dress rehearsal event where we get several hundred people out to test the stations, test the trains, make sure, just kind of give it another look. The other thing that transit does is take the customer service teams through that area so that when they're taking phone calls, they have a better sense of the stations and where they are. And, for example, some of the stations like Walkley, like how do you get from Walkley LRT to Walkley bus transit? There's things like that are easier to understand once you're out there. So there's those things. And then, it's just focusing on training for the operators, for the controllers in the control room, for the maintenance staff. Those are all kind of additional activities we would do.
And approximate timeline, is that weeks or days or?
Yeah, we don't have at this time, some of it's related to the maturity of how quickly we can get access to a final system, the uptake on the training. There's a number of factors.
Okay. Is there any consideration or any consideration of partial opening of the Trillium line? For example, if we get through operational readiness and we're ready to open from Bayview to Carleton, but not all the way to the south end, is that feasible? Or if we end up where we've got Dow's Lake Station without electricity, but everything else is up and running, is there a possibility to start the system without Dow's Lake? Or is it a all or nothing kind of opening?
Thank you for the question. We can consider it. However, it won't be my recommendation at this time.
Okay, thank you. What impacts, if any, did the outage over the past month or so have on schedule for the Trillium line?
Mr. Chair, I wouldn't say it's impossible to say it's like a 1-for-1. It's just that set of activities is now deferred and it will be compressed. And if there, you know, one of the messages I give to our team, and the contractor has been pretty consistent with their team as well, is to say the sooner we can finish things, the sooner we can get in, we can identify if there's issues. And so as we see here today, if there's an electrical issue that we're not aware of because we haven't turned on the power to test it, then that may add time later.
Okay.
So it's just, snowballing effect of risks and, outstanding work that it's yet to be completed.
I'd heard that there might be impacts to training of staff on the Trillium line because some operators were being used for replacement buses during the outage. Is that still considered is that still an effect or a concern?
I mean, Mr. Chair, I would say that today the delay to training is a function of the maturity of the signal system as opposed to the impacts happening in Confederation. One of the things that, when we came to committee earlier in the year, we talked about August being a deadline to see trains running end to end. Well, so we have the trains running end to end. Now I need to see 9 trains running end to end. That's the next milestone. And so in the interim, we're only getting 2, 3, 4 trains out per day. And so as a result, we have kind of an excess capacity or we don't have enough capacity to accommodate the full training group.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for the update today. Appreciate it.
Si je peux juste compléter parce que c'est important.
If I may, because we have to be very clear. It's not because we're using the operators on the buses that we're late on some works. Right now, some EROs will become DROs, but because we can free them, we have to train some bus drivers. But because the Confederation line was suspended, we cannot train them. It's not because we transfer personnel to a different tasks.
Thank you. Just last member at this point, then I'll go to non-members and then back to Councillor Kavanagh. So Councillor Tierney.
Great. Thank you, Chair. First of all, I want to thank the team. It's been a long journey in the East End specifically, how traffic has been affected during this entire time, going back to when we had to close the ramp from the 417 to the 174 for multiple years to ensure there wasn't conflicts with buses while building stage 1. The hole ramming and construction for stage 2, and obviously there's still quite a bit of traffic impacts right now in the East End. As you know, there's about 20 minutes of congestion between Montreal to basically Place d'Orleans, just because of the needs for those lanes. So I want to thank the people of the East for your patience. There's light at the end of the non-tunnel. There's no tunnel for our section, but we're getting near the end. But what I'm running into right now is the one problem, and I'm hoping you can assist, is when you come westbound and you get off at the off-ramp at Montreal Road. Currently, for the last 2 weeks, there's been a no right turn on Montreal Road, because of course there'd be conflicts with the bus that has to go through there right now. So there's no ability for people to go down Montreal Road. So either A, they're breaking the rules, and I saw our Ottawa Police Service issuing a lot of tickets on the weekend, or B, they turn left and they go down to the construction yard essentially and do a U-turn in the gravel area, coming back out, making it very dangerous. So I'm just wondering, is this going to be a short term? I've tried to inquire on this, and I want to know, is it going to be much longer? Because if it's going to be a lot longer, I think we've got to find a new mitigation, because it's dangerous right now.
Mr. Chair, we'll have to get back to the member on that particular issue and come up with a plan, make sure that, everyone's satisfied with the duration. If it's going to run longer, do we need to make a change? Or, if it's going to end soon, then that would be even better news. So
Completely agree. Thank you. Next question, Chair, and I'll keep everything brief. to respect everyone's time. The bike paths. People are very excited about those bike paths between stations right now. They see them, they're nice and paved, they look good. I'm just wondering, knowing that we're going to be opening up 2024, 2025 for stage 2, and the paths are looking relatively complete. And I see that right now they're even having to block off areas of the path because cyclists are jumping on them anyway. Do we have to wait till the keys are turned over for stage 2 in its entirety, or is there a plan that the bike paths can be staggered and opened? I understand this year's probably out of the cards, but possibly next year.
Mr. Chair, some of those paths are used for construction access, and so we would need to make sure that any location where the path looks ready, we would not be impeding the construction access. But there are some locations that are certainly far away from the staging areas that we could review or consider. One of the new bridges, so we put in a new Greens Creek pedestrian bridge, which is again a very exciting connection for the community. Unfortunately, there's a lining project of the culverts right adjacent to that bridge that needs to be done, and so that's delaying our opening of those areas. But we can look on a case by case to see if there's an opportunity to open some of those earlier as work kind of wraps up.
Wonderful news. Thank you. That's great. So I look forward to continuing that conversation. My last question, Mr. Chair, is the bus routes. I always want to make sure that we're not losing sight of that. Just remind me again when the consultations are going to begin for the new, I'm calling it Spoken Hub. I know people don't like that, but the new exciting bus routes that will connect to our future stations, because obviously we'll be doing that with the discussions with our residents as well.
Mr. Chair, we've, as you know, as certainly the councillor knows, we held public engagement sessions early part of the summer with residents in that area. We've conducted a very extensive survey, which many customers took part in, telling us their priorities were for designing the future transit network. Yeah. We're working through that now. We think we will be back in touch with all councillors towards the end of this year, later in this year, and we'll work out with each councillor or group of councillors when an appropriate time would be to engage further with customers.
Terrific news. Thank you very much, everybody. That's my questions, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Menard is next.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you to staff for that presentation. That's very appreciated. I have a few questions I'll run through. We often hear about the R1, and we talk less about the R2 though. So I'm just wondering, how has the R2 been operating in staff's opinion? And obviously we're going to have to extend the timeline the R2's operating to replace the former O train further than we expected. But just wondering if you can provide a brief update on that.
Mr. Chair, the Line 2 replacement bus service has been obviously in place since Line 2 closed, operating between Bayview and South Keys, with stops at all the O train stations. And it was very heavily affected early on by the small number of people that were traveling to and from Carleton University during the depths of the pandemic. It's been back to full service, largely full service since learning in person returned at the university. And based on the ridership that we saw before this summer, we've got an increased service, which has begun this week compared to the summer. And it'll continue to run. It's running reasonably well. Obviously, it's a lot slower than a train, but with the transit priority measures that council adopted, building the new road at Carleton University, the Q jump lane northbound at Holmwood, the double left turn from Bronson onto Carling, all of those things and the other signal timings put together keep that bus moving as well as it can in the current conditions.
Thanks very much, Chair, for that answer. And obviously, I'm seized with the students coming back to Carleton this fall. That's happening shortly. People are moving into res, and that'll be a very, very busy campus this fall. And of course, I know the president who's actually moving on, very seized with the issue as well in terms of just service for students that are going to be back to school this fall. With regard to that, on the Rideau River pedestrian bridge, I know this is something I've been working with staff on quite a bit in terms of its opening. I know Councillor Brockington shares a portion of this as well. I'm wondering, do we have the exact date now for opening? And is it going to be maintained in the winter?
Mr. Chair, we do not have an exact opening date for that bridge at this point. We know roughly the work plan that remains, but subject to change. We don't know the precise weekend it could potentially open. In terms of winter maintenance, at this time, I don't believe it's winter maintained because it's connecting to a pathway that's not winter maintained. I think just the opposite. People are looking to convert that pathway into a ski zone. So there's probably some discussion to be had there.
Yeah, I'm excited to extend the Rideau Winter Trail along those NCC pathways and connect up with that bridge and Carleton University, certainly. And just want to make sure, do we have I know you didn't say exact date. Do we have an approximate time, though? Are we looking at September as we last discussed, or has it been moved off further?
Just in terms of remaining work, there's a concrete pour on the deck this week. There's another concrete pour the following week. There's some remaining drainage work required on the north side. We need to pave the approaches on either side, and we need to do the electrical work on the actual structure for the lighting. So that puts us closer to the end of September in terms of everything going well and not running into any more hiccups.
Okay, thanks very much for that answer. That's appreciated. With regard to the launch of the Stage 2 Trillium line, I'm wondering the bus routes that I know in Stage 1, we changed a lot of the bus routes, obviously. Is there going to be a memo that shows the up-to-date how those bus routes will be changed with regard to R2 timing, and then also obviously other routes that service that line, similar to Councillor Tierney's question, just for the launch of the Trillium line?
Mr. Chair, the answer is yes.
Okay, that would be really helpful, just so we know. And I know last time we sort of had the reductions of we had a letter sent to drivers saying we were reducing drivers, and then we changed that for Stage 1. In this case, are we reducing drivers? I know we've been trying to attract drivers. I can't imagine we'd be reducing them in this case.
Mr. Chair, it's totally different because actually I think we need maybe 12 or 15 buses for the Trillium line, and I think for the Confederation line it was 150 buses. So it's totally different. And I'm still looking for new bus drivers because we need to train more ERO, DROs. So actually, we're not planning to fire the bus drivers with regard to the Trillium line.
Okay, that's important, and I really appreciate that. We know the monthly operating cost for Stage 1 LRT is $4 to $5 million a month. What is the monthly operating cost to the for operations expected to be for the Stage 2 Trillium line?
We can come back to Chair with this. I don't have it on the top of my mind.
Okay, that's really helpful. I would love that information. And then just on the last question, Chair, is obviously we hear from passengers about bathrooms often. And I know some stations will have bathrooms and some will not. And so I guess I'm just wondering, can we preempt those effects by adding simple things, cost-effective things like porta potties for comfort for folks at the stations that don't have bathrooms?
Mr. Chair, at this point, there would be no plan to add porta potties to the Trillium line transit stations, but we can certainly get you a list of the locations where we have a plan to add public washrooms, because that is being we are adding more public washrooms in line with what we did in Stage 1. Obviously, not at all locations. we can get you that list. And obviously, if there's some other direction to add porta potties or temporary facilities at a certain location, staff could take that away.
Okay, really appreciate it. Thanks very much, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Lowe.
Thank you, Chair. With the single car operations on line 1 right now, and the school year at Carleton expected to start again soon, I think. Are there any concerns about the transfer capacity? This might be more of a transit question, but it's kind of related to this because it's technically a line 2 replacement bus. But are there any capacity concerns in terms of that transfer point at Bayview Station, where you have that huge load of students from Carleton that are going to transfer to Bayview to go west mostly?
Mr. Chair, we'll monitor that, but actually we don't have this issue, but we can face with it easily because if we need, we can have double cars instead of having single car.
Okay, and because I know the intention behind a single car is to reduce the mileage or to preserve the mileage of the trains. But if I may throw out a suggestion, perhaps extending the line 2 bus to Tunney's Pasture, just even if it's a peak period thing, especially later on as the school year ramps up when we get more passengers. Second question, still on line 2, the signal so is the line still considered, is the line still going to be considered a heavy rail line like the former O train was?
So, Mr. Chair, we still have federal regulatory obligations, and so as part of the line, we've maintained the ability to take freight vehicles on the line through a certain route, and so that requires platform extenders at some locations to create that route. We are still supporting the National Research Council, who every 6 weeks or so, they take a delivery of test cars, either from VIA or from CN to their facility, which is just south of Walkley Yard. So that section is built for heavy rail. So we have a portion of the line from essentially the south, where it turns at Beauceville, all the way through to Bayview, that still technically could take a freight vehicle. We still have those freight obligations still exist. The only actual freight movement is the movements from Walkley Yard to the National Research Council facility.
Okay. So I noticed that the signals that have been installed on the Trillium line are very similar, maybe the same as the ones that are on the Confederation line. Please correct me if I'm wrong. But are there any, I'm assuming Transport Canada has kind of given an okay for those signals because they kind of have a very particular railway signal design.
So, Mr. Chair, we've been working with Transport Canada on the signal solution for the last 5 years. And so one of the things, you have a range of options when you're doing the buying, speccing, implementing a signal system. And we chose to go with a more transit style signal approach as opposed to a freight style, just because it's simpler. There's less decision making. We saw a lot of complications in the old version with the signals, and just increases the complexity of everything. So we have been working with Transport Canada on that. It is in those new signals are embedded in the rules, which have been approved by Transport Canada, and so we're in good shape there. There'll be no surprises there.
Okay, last question, moving into the west. The visual impact of the LMSF is striking, to say the least, when you come down the hill, especially from Canada. Have there been any plans or at least discussions to perhaps soften that? I know it's on the aesthetic, it's more of an aesthetic discussion. It has no service impact at all, but have there been any discussions or plans to soften that impact?
Mr. Chair, at this time, no.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor King.
Thank you, Chair. And I think I'll just continue to build on some of the questions that Councillor Lowe had in regard to the memo issued on August 16th concerning Stage 2. I was just wondering if staff can provide more additional technical detail as to why the signal testing has been advancing slowly, since that is one of the key items that's holding up the project. And I'm just wondering if that is tied to delays to hydro installation.
Mr. Chair, at this time, the hydro strike is not impacting the signal commissioning. The signal commissioning is really a function of the complexity of the system, the integration with the track, the integration with the signals, the integration with the trains. typically we see this go slowly, you know, so we knew that at the start of the summer that the schedule was aggressive, optimistic, all those things. We, you know, did put a number of qualifiers around it, and it's progressing slowly because signal testing often progresses slowly.
Okay, appreciate that answer. Do we have any, and I know you're going to, I think you indicated that you're going to provide us some more detail at the next meeting, but I'm just wondering if we can get an idea of timelines concerning the signal testing.
Generally, in terms of the testing and the progress of the testing, what we're looking for is for them to ramp up from, they're going to go from 2 trains to 5 trains to 7 trains to 9 trains on the network over the next 4 to 6 weeks. So that's, as we see that progress, you'll, you know, if you live near the line, you'll start to see those vehicles, start to see them more frequently. That will be the indicator for progress on the testing of that system.
Okay, I appreciate those answers, and those were my questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor King. Back to Councillor Kavanaugh.
Thank you, Chair. I think I heard when you were responding about to Councillor Menard about the pedestrian bridge, that there's lighting on that pedestrian bridge. Is it possible to have the same lighting for the current Woodruff pedestrian bridge?
Mr. Chair, we'll take away the lighting question on that bridge, on both bridges, just to confirm. But we will absolutely endeavor to take your feedback to the contractor and see if there's something that can be done there.
Thank you. Appreciate that. A question about the glass. Is it bird friendly at the stations?
Mr. Chair, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? I'd like to ask if you, Councillor Dudas wrote this morning to you with respect to the Jeanne d'Arc structures, and I think you answered the question this morning. Councillor Dudas's questions. She wrote you this morning about the configuration of that station and the presentation graphics versus what is planned, and I think you outlined that today. So I know you'll get back to Councillor Dudas with a response, which I think you covered today. Correct?
Correct.
Great. You know, obviously there's a lot of attention to the timeframes and the milestones and getting the service up and running, particularly with regard to the Trillium line and the really difficult commutes that are experienced by mostly Carleton staff and students at the present time. So there's a lot of focus on that. And you know, I've been telling people that obviously the trial running is going to be critical to meeting that, and you've committed here to be very transparent in terms of how that testing will go and communicating the results and what those standards will be. But in the report, you talk about risk. There continues to be risk on these timelines, and I think I've been telling certainly my constituents that we need to make sure that the trial runnings come back with the very high grades, and if there's issues, then that there could be an impact there. So if you just comment on that stage and the risk that's inherent with that.
Mr. Chair, the criteria laid out in the project agreement requires 98.5% performance out of the train system and over a 14-day period out of the 21 days. But really, we want to make sure that there are no questions, no hesitation, that, if it takes longer, will take longer, that we should really be focusing on making sure the system is as stable as possible. And even if the, contractor is able to achieve substantial completion, there may still likely be a decision to say that we want additional running time to make sure everyone's fully satisfied. That 14 days, does it need to be longer? Does it need to be shorter? We really need in the moment to understand how well it does. Are the operators proficient in using the system? Are the controllers proficient in setting up the routes? Is the maintainer proficient in dealing with the trains overnight? So all of those things we want to be solid on, and we want to be confident in, and we want to have your confidence before we make any decision about opening that system up to the public.
Okay, thank you. And during your presentation, I guess I was surprised to hear that you were working on some landscaping and to someone watching this project, they would have heard, hey, we're focusing on kind of the core pieces of this to make sure it's up and running. You know full well that I'm very interested in all the stations on the Trillium line, but particularly the ones that reach into my ward, and the Line Bank station, and the need for traffic signals on Earl Armstrong there to facilitate the movements in that area. And so someone may say, well, you're doing landscaping, but how come you're not working on these traffic lights? I assume the answer is obviously the people who do landscaping aren't going to be installing traffic lights. But if you could just kind of reconcile that in terms of how you're prioritizing work, and how does landscaping kind of make the cut at this point?
Mr. Chair, the landscaping is a requirement of the contract in any event, and you're right, it is absolutely it will be different crews that are doing that work, that are planting the trees and planting the shrubbery and doing some simple civil works. One of the examples in terms of prioritizing work, so for example, there is overlap between the work that's required at the Rideau River pedestrian bridge in terms of paving and civil works with the work at the park and rides. And so we've prioritized the work at the park and rides. And that's in part why you've seen the pedestrian bridge not coming online as quickly, is because any civil crews that we had that were doing roadworks or grading or that type of thing, we wanted them focused on those park and rides in the south. We were through those areas last week. A lot of crews working on those park and rides, as well as the intersections, the roadways. So that absolutely a different crew, but it's absolutely the priority. We're down to like trying to understand exactly what the timing would be for each of those individual lots, and making sure that those are done as quickly as possible. Even to the extent of saying portions of the park and ride, for example, Bowesville Park and Ride is quite large, and perhaps it makes sense to prioritize, once you have a functional Bowesville Park and Ride, to reassign those resources to finish the roads and then come back and finish off the park and ride at a later date, because that is a very large location. So we're having those discussions with the contractor regularly to make sure they're focused on the real things. We've told them, if you want to do landscaping in 2024, we're happy. It's not a priority for us. Come back and do it later. It's more just they are doing it. It's an indication of progress at some of the stations, as opposed to an indication of progress at some of the bigger areas or the more critical activities.
And I would certainly support that. I think you're right. I mean, these park and rides were constructed with pre-pandemic ridership projections, which just are not materializing presently. So I would support that. I was at the South Keys station, and Mr. Scrimger will tell you, you probably had to be there at 5 a.m. pre-pandemic, if not sooner, to get spots that you can now get at 10 or 11. It's, this is not poor service either. This is the hybrid work environment that is affecting these park and rides. So I appreciate that you'll not finish spot 299 and 300, which will not be used for some time. Lastly, I'm happy to see that the Woodruff pedestrian bridge was opened. Several questions today about, can you kind of resequence or change the sequencing in terms of when things come online? There's a lot of pressure, obviously, because the projects are delayed, and so if there are some pieces that are ready, and if safety is satisfied, that you do that. But I guess I'm curious: is there any trade-offs in terms of cost? Is there any trade-offs in terms of our warranty? I mean, obviously, the other branches of the city need to be ready if there is winter maintenance and what have you. And I assume you're working with them. So I see it in the suburban communities when we have new parks come online, that the pressure to get into park, we will say, we will open this part here and let people, use this part, but the soccer fields are still closed, or this structure is still closed. So, we don't wait until the entire thing is complete. I think that would be ideal from a contract management point of view, but not very practical for the public who've been waiting a long time. So I just in the interest of transparency, what are the trade-offs for us when we start opening things ahead of the schedule and prior to kind of the full formal turnover to the City of Ottawa?
Mr. Chair, the Woodruff pedestrian bridge was a kind of, I would call it a special case, where in the contract there was a requirement to replace that bridge and put in the new bridge before the old bridge came down. And so that was kind of a special case where we knew that bridge would be handed over and opened up prior to the system being finished. In the case of other areas along the project, many of the areas that are used for that will eventually become multi-use pathways or resources for the community are currently used for staging. Like many areas on the project are very tight in terms of access, like to be able to get construction workers and materials and other things to the site. You know, we're right now we're borrowing from Byron Avenue all the time because there's just no space to get materials into the tunnel. And so in some areas, it is possible to hand over infrastructure early. You know, there could be, you know, something like the Greens Creek pedestrian bridge, which hasn't been handed over, is somewhat isolated from the rest of the construction. And in those cases, it's fairly simple. But in other cases, you know, it could be, to some extent, we're interfering with the operations of the contractor. And so that will, you know, cost more money, slow them down. There has to be a real kind of compelling reason to open something early before the contractor's ready. Now, if the contractor says, hey, I'm done in this area, do you want to take it? You know, we'll have those discussions. But to date, it's been just case by case, and there's been very few instances where we've been able to do that.
So from a contract management point of view, we then take it over. The warranty essentially starts taking on all of these elements.
Absolutely. As soon as it's handed over, the contractor will, you know, ask us to release the construction lien holdback. They will start the clock on the warranty. We will need to take over the maintenance. And, you know, I think that one of the unintended consequences could be that that facility, because the rest of the facility is not being used properly, doesn't actually get the use that you would expect in normal circumstances, and therefore you may not get the benefit of exercising the facility to get a true measure of whether it's been commissioned correctly, built correctly. You'll lose some of that warranty period with lighter loads or lighter crowds.
And how will this committee find out about change orders at this point in time, so that if there are things are coming online, I'm not picking on anyone today, but you heard, okay, well, we want lighting now here. It wasn't part of the contract. How does this committee have transparency on what will be potentially change orders to the contract that would have a cost?
So primarily, when we've been making major changes to the project, so we have made, you know, 2 or 3 large changes that required funding from contingency, we would ask the ward councillor and the mayor for consent. So that's been the process in the past, and we used that for changes at Line Bank Station when we spent a big portion of funding on that station. We did the same for some changes at Orleans Boulevard and Jeanne d'Arc. So the things where it's kind of new changes and if there's a request, oftentimes we're looking for consent from the mayor and from the ward councillor who's affected by that change for that work. Otherwise, you know, we brought a report to committee and council a number of years ago, maybe last year, on the contingency budget and the spend and where the monies have gone. We will be bringing another one forward this year to provide an update on that funding and where we've been spending things. You know, in some cases, change orders due to safety condition, change orders due to regulatory, we just go ahead and do those because you have, you know, there's really no opportunity to not do them, to be in compliance with the law or the regulations. If there's something that's desired that's new, then typically we would look for the ward councillor's consent on that matter.
Thank you. Those are all the questions that I have. I don't see any other members. So I think we've essentially received the report. So that report is received. Thank you. Correspondence, none to date. We didn't have any, in-camera items, item 5, none for today's meeting. Notice of motions. I don't think we've received any inquiries. Haven't received any, and there's no other business. So with that, thank you again to the staff. Merci à tout le monde.
Thank you very much to everyone who assisted in preparing the report. Thank you for the work that's ongoing on a daily basis.
The meeting is adjourned for today. Thank you.